I'm Brody Vinson, and you're watching Profession Session. On today is Mitchell Chamale, one of the founders of Combat Night MMA, Florida's hottest fight promotion. He's here to talk about how it all started.
We decided after watching another local show, oh man, we can do that. Like, what do we got to do this? We started writing down ideas for like who would fight, who would sponsor, where would we have the show.
And get deep into the psyche of having professional success in one of the most jarring industries that are out there.
You have to be selfish. If you're not going to be selfish as a fighter, if you're not going to do everything in your power to be the best in the world and what you think is the right thing to do, there's a good chance you're not going to be successful.
From the perspective of someone who's seen many people go to the UFC and have professional success amongst the most competitive thing out there,
I can provide a lot of helpful insight, and I can help others get to where they want to be.
And to hurt some feelings along the way.
I'm going to probably piss someone off, but I think they're doing themselves a disservice, and they're doing their child a disservice.
Stay around for one of our deepest dives yet into some controversial but important things to consider if you want to achieve big things in life.
I just was always asking myself, like, how am I going to make it in this world? I knew from a young age that I was not built for the 9-to-5 grind, and everyone around me had these real jobs. Even whenever I started the Combat Night stuff, people thought I was silly. To this day, people will still ask me, oh, who's your boss? Bitch.
Thanks so much for tuning into this episode of Profession Session. I'm Brody Vinson, and I'm on a mission not only to define professional greatness through the tactics and qualities behind it, but also to help anyone that's trying to achieve professional greatness do it through the lens of others that have achieved it before them. I couldn't be more thankful for everyone that helps me continue along this mission through being able to do this podcast. And if you've ever gotten any value out of it, I ask only two things in return. If you could share it in the same way that you found it with someone else that you think could get value, it helps me so much. And if you could also just hit the subscribe button if you haven't yet, it helps me so much in just securing better and better guests for the show to share more impactful knowledge with you in this pursuit that we're both on for professional greatness. So without further ado, let's get on to this week's episode.
I think for me and a lot of people that fighting probably started at home with a big brother. But in the professional sense, I went to college and took a judo class, and from the judo class, I met a kid who did jiu-jitsu. I wrestled in high school, so I wanted to do something competitive in college. And then the judo kid took me to jiu-jitsu, and then at jiu-jitsu, they took me to an MMA gym, and I wasn't there for long, and they asked me if I wanted to fight to get paid, and I was like, you'll pay me to fight? And I was like, you'll give me money for that? And I took my first fight like 2 or 3 months later. I won. And then I took another fight a couple months later. I won again. And then Bellator called me and wanted me to fight for them. And I was like, oh, man. I was like, I have a chance to be a professional.
Yeah.
And they were like, nah, man, you're a professional. You've been getting paid to fight. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, I've been fighting in, like, podunk, nothing. I'm a professional? And they're like, yeah, you're a professional athlete. And I was like, oh, all right. Like, cool, I'm a professional athlete. And took the fight in Bellator. I took my first loss. And then I went out to Greg Jackson's camp. I stayed with Cowboy for a while and wanted to find out if like fighting was really for me or not. I was in school at the time. I was getting ready to go to law school.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I wanted to I just graduated college. In college, I was doing a lot of stuff. My senior year when I took those 2 fights, I was also a cheerleader for FSU. I was also taking like 16 credit hours just to finish up my schooling. So I was like, let me give this, I went 2-1 with a whole bunch of stuff on my plate. Let me take everything off my plate and give it a fair run. And then in that time period where I was doing that, I realized it's hard to have a job. I was working 40 hours a week and train full time to be a good athlete and really focus on it. So me and my business partner at the time, Josh Saman, we decided after watching a Rise of a Warrior event, another local show, we were like, oh man, we can do that. Like, what do we got to do this? And it was the first show we had really went to that was like super nice and professional, and they did everything right. And on the way home, I need to start bringing it with me. There was like a ripped envelope from him checking his mail in his car, and we picked it up. We started writing down ideas for like who would fight, who would sponsor, where would we have the show.
You still have that envelope?
Yeah, I
Wow.
do. He actually gave it to me as a Christmas gift like 4 years later.
That's awesome.
So 4 years later, it was framed, and he handed it to me, and I like opened it, and I was like, oh shit, like this is the paper that we wrote on, It's It's all my handwriting. So I would guess after I got done writing, I probably just left it in the car, and he found it. For whatever reason, he kept it.
Wow. That's cool to have.
Yeah, it was cool, you know, and like it was very we had no idea what we were doing, and thankfully we had some mentors like Sherry Carpenter, Lance Maxwell, that were really guiding us and helping us. You know, you got to open a business account, you got to get an LLC, because we were so wet behind the ears. We were just, you know, finishing up college, had no clue about business. We were fighters, and so when we went into that endeavor, this is right at 11 years now. In January, 11 years ago, it wasn't to revolutionize or to be the next big thing. It was really just to make money so we could fight full time. It was like, we can make a couple $1,000s and make it last through our camps, like we'll be good. And thankfully we had so many people supporting us in Tallahassee. We did make money on our first show. You know, we made money on the first couple shows, and we were finding out how to like save money too. You know, like, okay, we spent way too much money. We're spending, like, you know, good example, $2 on a poster. Okay, now we get them for 50 cents. It's like, you know, finding out little things here and there, saving $100 there, saving $100 here. And then after a few years, Josh had went on to be in the UFC. He was an Ultimate Fighter. And I had a couple more pro fights. I was still fighting professionally. But after about, I would say, the 3-year mark is where we started traveling to multiple cities, Orlando, Jacksonville, Miami. And that's whenever we realized, like, oh, we've got something here. Like, we can do this, you know, 12, 16 times a year and make a really good living for our families and train full times and still be fighters. But then at like the 6 or 7 year mark, actually, like, it's crazy to think about how long ago it was. It's more around like the 5-year mark. My business partner passed away, Josh.
Oh, man.
So once he passed away, I had to do a lot of soul searching for myself and kind of decide, like, do I want to keep doing this? You know, is this something that I'm truly, I knew I was passionate about fighting, and I knew I was passionate about business. I enjoyed business. I enjoy hustling. I've been doing it since I was like 14. I used to buy and sell cars when I was a young kid. Before I could even drive, I would buy a car that was messed up or whatever, and then I would fix it and I would sell it. So even before.
I want to zoom out for a second because we went like all the way kind of to almost current day.
Back, yeah.
But I heard in there just an incredibly driven dude since the very beginning, since 14 even, you said. Where do you think all that comes from? Where did that come from for you?
That's definitely my dad and my mom. You know, they both, my dad was a farmer, so he had me up when I was 10 years old. I was waking up, you know, most kids are waking up on Saturday morning to watch cartoons and go play football or do whatever. On Saturday morning at 5 a.m., I was waking up and I was going to the fields and I was picking fruit. At the time, it was something I was completely ashamed of. Like, you know, all my friends were talking about how, you know, they're spending their weekends, and I didn't even mention that my first 7 hours of a Saturday was spent in a field picking watermelon. You know, I got done by noon, 1 o'clock, and I got to play and do whatever I wanted after that. But, you know, my dad was an incredibly hard worker. My mom worked 2 or 3 jobs. We were poor as shit growing up. We lived in a double-wide trailer. You know, looking back and thinking about how hard my mom worked and how hard my dad worked, it's almost like sad to think how poor we were. Like, how were we that poor? And it's really because of the decisions they made. I won't go into that. But, you know, they could have worked half as hard and just made better financial decisions, and we wouldn't have struggled as much. But not a lot of people understand that. Not a lot of people know that. So whenever growing up, working with my dad in the fields, it was backbreaking work, man. Like, it was hard, especially for a 10-year-old. And I did that all the way up until I was probably 16 or 17. So that taught me hard work. That taught me how to, like, the real hard work, like with my hands. And then that also taught me that's not what I want to do for the rest of my life. Like, you know, I'm a smart kid. I was charismatic. I knew how to talk and all that good stuff. So I still work hard, but it's just in a different way. But definitely my dad and my mom, watching them work and watching them grind as I was coming up is a big reason why. I know it's the reason why I'm a hard worker.
So did you, from a very early age, do you think, see that there was a way to kind of leverage this work ethic to just make more money? Did you kind of have that feeling that there was just a better way to do it?
Yeah, I knew there was a better way. You know, but I didn't know that until I got a little older. You know, kids didn't really come stay the night at my house. Again, I was a little embarrassed. I lived in a trailer park, a double wide. Nothing I'm embarrassed of now or ashamed of now, but when I was younger, I remember the first time I stayed the night at a kid's house, and they lived in a 2-story house, and I was like, whoa, this is a mansion. This is crazy. And his parents were there and present the entire time I was there. You know, throughout the whole. I think I was there for like all day Friday, all day Saturday. I got off from school and went there and then stayed the night. And I was like, man, well, if they can do it, why can't someone else do it? Like, why can't my parents do this? Like, what's happening? You know. And then I've always been like, I always take notes, you know, constantly in my head about things that are happening. And I just knew something, like, I never learned anything about finances or anything from my family. I didn't understand money growing up. I just knew I wanted a lot of it. Like, I knew my dad always had a lot of cash on him. And I was like, all right, money's like, so my goal was always like, how can I make the most money possible with the least amount of work? And so that way, if I work really hard and I can only work for 5 minutes on this and make $5, and then 5 minutes on this and make $5, and I can just keep working hard. But each little, you know, goal that I set for myself to make money isn't hard to get there. Then I make a lot of money. And that's kind of what I've always kept with, is just make the most amount of money with the least amount of work. But I'm gonna bust my ass. So if I work really hard, but it doesn't take a lot of work to make these little, you know, monies here and there, I'm gonna be set. So that's really kind of the mindset I've had. Since I was little. I mean, that's why I was flipping cars. That's why bro, there wasn't, like, I was in college, you know, the end of the year, like, everyone throws out all their couches and beds and all this kind of stuff. Like, you know, you're cleaning out, I worked for an apartment complex, and I would go and clean out a room, and there'd be a couch in there, and there'd be this and that, Craigslist, couch for sale. I'll come back to this apartment in a day or two, and I'd put a price that no way no one's going to say no. Someone's going to want to buy this couch for $50 or $100. So I was like, hey, meet me at the apartment. Cool. Carry it out with them. So, like, I'm doing my job for the complex, and I'm making $100 because I sold the couch that was just sitting in there anyways. So I always, like, just finding ways to hustle, and then, like I said, least amount of work, some money.
I hear stuff like that and immediately think, like, that's an entrepreneurial quality. Did you recognize that at the time? Because it sounded like you were on track to go do law school from the start, or from some point, which is, you know, very set kind of routine practice. Like, and many times there's a set structure to that. So did you recognize that you had that kind of entrepreneurial spirit back then?
I didn't know that's what it was. If I'm being honest, I had no idea. I knew from a young age that I was not built for the 9-to-5 grind. I knew from a young age that I didn't like working for other people. I knew from a young age, you know, all these things that, like, make an entrepreneur, but they also make really, really shitty members of society, you know? I know plenty of people that have these same traits, don't like working for other people, you know, don't like taking, you know, having a boss, like all these kind of things, and then they just don't do anything with their life. So, no, I had no idea it was an entrepreneurial mindset. At the time, I just was always asking myself, like, how am I going to make it in this world? Like, because all I ever saw were the cookie cutter jobs. My mom and my dad, like, even though my dad was an entrepreneur, he struggled. Like, you know, it was a lot of work. It was hard work. And then my mom had multiple jobs, and everyone around me had like these real jobs. Even whenever I started the combat night stuff, people thought I was silly. Like, to this day, people will still ask me, like, oh, who's your boss? It's like, bitch, I've been doing this for 11 years.
Yeah.
And you know me all those 11 years. Have you ever, like, what, like, come on, my guy. You know what I mean? So, at the time, though, I had no idea. I didn't know I thought it was I was the black sheep in my family as well. So at the time, I just thought I was lazy, to be honest with you. I was like, yeah, this is, even though I was such a hustler and I was always looking for a way to make money or a way to improve, you know, my situation. The mindset of, like, work as little as possible or make as much as possible. Even though I was working hard and I would do 20 things really, really hard, but each one was like a little bit of work that would equal some money. I didn't realize at the time that it was the entrepreneurial mindset. I didn't even know what that word was until I was probably in my, you know, early 20s.
It's funny because I think most of the best entrepreneurs are inherently almost unemployable. Like, they just can't have a job. I remember the example I give whenever I'm talking about this. Like, one time when I realized I had it is I had this job in college at Academy Sports where we would go at 3 a.m. and we were just unloading, like, all of the inventory for the day. We would unload the trucks and then put everything on pallet jacks and take it out and stock it up from like 3 a.m. to 12 p.m. And I had figured out that it's kind of similar to what you were saying, like, just doing the most amount of work with the least effort possible kind of thing. I had figured out that you could unload it, and then you could kind of skate on the pallet jacks, like just use it like a skateboard. And so I was just ripping it around the corners. No one in the store at this point, it's not even open. I'm like ripping it around the corners, and I had never run into anything. But then my manager was like, "You can't do that," and I was like, I'm getting like twice the amount of stuff out here doing this, and I'm not like hurting anything. It didn't compute, and I was like, I kind of recognized in that moment, like, I don't think I can take orders from someone. Like it just like doesn't compute.
It's not even that you can't take orders from somebody. It's that I can't take orders from somebody that's not thinking on my level.
Right.
You know, and I'm not like the greatest mind ever. By no means do I think that. But if I have a way that's working, that's better than the way you've shown me, then, and I'm not hurting anyone, nothing's wrong, like I haven't damaged anything, or, you know, like in your instance, it's like, why can't I keep doing this? If I fuck up, fire me. Cool, run it. But
I couldn't accept the answer at the time. I was just like, this is working so well. Like, I just didn't get it. So what do you think told you? I mean, obviously you said you made money pretty much right away at the first event. Aside from that, what were the things that were telling you and your partner at the time that this thing was working, that there was something to this enough to say, hey, like, we're going to do this rather than having like any other job?
You know, we had a lot of, over the years, we built our name in the sport through fighting. And we had a lot of friends in the sport. So finding fighters and getting people involved wasn't really hard. I think, you know, having guys like Dean Thomas, having guys like Cole Miller, Bubby Mitchell, you know, these are all OGs in the game. Dan Donaldson, Richard Cox, like all of these guys saying like, man, you got something, this is something special, man. Like, oh, this is cool, this is different. Was kind of the fuel to get us to keep going and going bigger and better. You know, the mindset we had was, we fought on Bellator, UFC. We fought for all the major promotions and all the podunk ones too. We fought for RFC in Tampa. We fought for, you know, Fight Night at the Tabernacle in Georgia and all these like offshoot promotions. And it was like, we just wanted to take everything that we liked and do more of that. And everything we didn't like, you know, we didn't like the fact that I would show up to an event, I would fight for $300 and I would ask for an event shirt afterwards. And they'd be like, oh, the table's over there. I'm like, damn, bro, I just fought you. I mean, literally, I spent $200 on medicals. I spent $100 in gas to get here and get back. And you can't give me a $20 shirt that you paid $7 for? Yeah. So, like, little things like that, not having footage of our fights, you know, we made sure everyone had footage of their fights. It's just all the little small things that we did that I think everyone noticed. And then we started realizing, like, whoa, like, the fighters are really, really, like, they're with us on this. They feel the difference. So as we started seeing that happening, and we were finding more ways to save money and more ways to make money, it just one thing led to another, and we realized like we have something special here. But like, you know, it really, unfortunately, I realized that once my business partner passed away, because when I was doing all that reflection and I was thinking about like, do I even want to do this anymore? Like, you know, my head was all over the place. I really, really, really realized that we have something special here, and I didn't want to lose it. So, you know, the first year was really hard without him, but, you know, that's when I realized, like, when I lost him and the outpour of love we were receiving and the conversations I had with, you know, multiple mentors of mine and friends about, you know, where my head was at, what I was thinking, it was like, it was very consistent. Everyone was like, yo, do you know what you got here? Do you realize what you're doing for the fight community? Do you realize? And, like, people were just, I mean, it wasn't even like, you know, you can tell when someone's like, oh, man, come on, keep doing it, you know. It's like, these were real thoughtful and passionate remarks about the company we built. And so that's really the moment. And it sucks because he never got to see, like, what we've become now. You know, this is like, I'm not even lying, it's like a dream. It's like a dream come true, what we're doing right now in the fight game. So it sucks that he never saw that, because it's all things that we talked about. You know, we talked about doing professional fights one day. We talked about helping these guys get to the next level and getting more involved with the fight camps and helping, you know, being mentors of these athletes and showing them the way that we, you know, because we never had anyone do that for us. So, yeah, like I said, it's unfortunate, the timing of it, but it's definitely at his passing was when we really realized how special what we had was.
So timeline-wise, again, how long ago was that? The passing?
So, man, it feels like it still feels like yesterday. It was October 5th, 2016. So it's been a minute. I was talking about, it's like we've had more events and we've been around longer now. We've done more since his passing than we did before.
Wow.
But, you know, all the groundwork was laid with him. You know, all the cities we went to happened with him. He was always like, he was the big dreamer. So he was this guy that was like, we're going to bring in cranes and we're going to shoot rockets off from over here. And the motorcycle's going to come out of this entrance. It's going to do a flip over there. You're going to figure out how to do it, Mitchell. I'd be like, all right. You know, I'd be like cussing him and be like, there's no fucking way we're going to do that. Like, how is that? This isn't impossible. And but he was the big dreamer, you know. He had the big ideas, and I was always the executor. I was always the guy that like figured out these things. So it was a big change whenever he did leave. But man, it's kind of been a big growth period for me too, though, because now I had to be the dreamer, and I had to be the one that make it happen. You know, I couldn't just think of these big ideas, and without the big ideas, there's nothing cool to make happen. So for us to continue to grow and continue to do big things, I had to kind of become that dreamer. And of course, the rest of the team too. Like we always have these powwows where we talk and figure out what we're going to do next, what might work, what might not work. So yeah.
I want to talk about that shift a little bit, and you got into it a little bit there, but the shift, because I was going to ask you before you told me what the roles looked like at the time and how you had to adjust, because I'm sure that must have been really hard. And it sounds like that's a really big set of shoes to fill. How did you teach yourself to dream big? That's a kind of a crazy question, right?
Yeah.
But how did you teach yourself to start dreaming big and fill that role?
So it was actually a really big pair of shoes to fill. Josh was like a size 14. He was a massive, massive human being, and he dreamed just as big as his feet were. That was one of his nicknames, old Bigfoot. But you know, at first it was extremely hard. Man, like everything was already set in place as far as going to these different cities and stuff, but you're going to always lose venues, have to find new venues, and have to find new ways to like incentivize people and like, you know, dream big. For me, it was a long process, man. I feel like, and it was crazy because he had been to my house for probably 2 weeks before he passed, maybe even a week. Maybe it was like the week before he passed. I had just had my son, who's about to be 7, and he was coming to visit and hang out. We hung out for like, you know, 4 or 5 days. Just he was at the crib chilling. And what we talked about the whole time he was there was like, it's time to do pro shows. We had already done about 50, I think, 60 shows at the time. We had done the Tallahassee Civic Center, put 5,000 people in there multiple times. And it was like, all right, let's do something. We got to do something bigger. It's always like, you know, got to do bigger, got to do more. And we talked about like, okay, the goal is pro show next year. We're doing a pro show next year. Why that is so big is because amateur shows cost about 1/5 of a pro show.
Okay.
But amateur shows are great, but if there's no pro show for the amateurs to fight on once they get done with their amateur career, now they're left to go fight in Georgia, Alabama, Texas, wherever. They're the out-of-town person, and just being honest, very rarely do you get a call to go fight in Texas and they're trying to put you in a winning situation. They're probably putting you in a losing situation. They don't know you.
Yeah.
You're fighting a local hometown guy. So I felt like, and he felt like too, we were doing our athletes a disservice. You know, we would
by
build
sending
them
them out to a losing situation.
Yeah, because we didn't have the pro fights. So that was a big goal of ours coming into the new year. So when he passed, you know, probably I'd say a solid month of like, just where do we go from here? What do we do? I would try to sit down and work on combat night stuff, and everything, picture of him, video of him, just it kept popping up. And then after about a month of that, I talked to the team and I was like, yo, we're coming out the gates next year with a pro show. Like, that was the goal. The goal was a pro show. So
the goal is still the goal.
Yeah, that's the goal. And there's no better way to like memorialize Josh and show him love, and then to do an event about exactly what we talked about, which was a pro event. So we did. We came back the very next year, and that was I guess that was kind of like my big moment of like, I guess, dreaming big, you know, like, okay, cool. This is like a whole new endeavor. Like a pro show is nothing like an amateur show. Pro shows, I could do an amateur show in my sleep. Like I could do the whole thing. No offense to my team, and I think people on my team too could do this. They could do the whole show by themselves.
Yeah.
They could staff it. They could, you know, do everything. Wouldn't need me there. And I wouldn't need them there, because that's how easy amateur shows are now for us. We've done 160 shows, and with every show, even the pro shows, there's always an amateur show attached. So we've done 160 amateur shows. Easy these days. So the dream big was we're doing a pro show now, and we don't have Josh.
For the first time ever.
Yeah, and Josh isn't here. And it's like the first show we plan is this show. It's like, okay, we're doing this pro show in Tallahassee, you know, where Josh was from. where I went to school at. And man, we crushed it. We didn't make money. We made like a little bit of money, but we crushed it. And
Proved the concept.
Yes, we proved we could do it and not lose money. And that's what, everyone that was telling us, like, don't do pro shows, like everyone that was in the business was like, oh man, just stick with your amateur shows. Y'all are crushing it. Yeah. Like, and we were making good money. There was no reason to risk doing a pro show. But again, we felt bad that we were giving the amateurs great experience, but we weren't setting them up for success to make it to the UFC, to make it to Bellator where we had made it. And we wanted to see these guys make it to the next level and make a career out of it. You see a lot of promotions that'll like give guys just easy fights. Like they just give them easy fights because maybe they're a ticket seller. And it's like they don't want the ticket seller to lose. They want him to keep winning. And that was kind of the same time period where we were figuring out, I'd say probably a year before Josh passed, that like we can't do that. If we want these guys to be successful on the pro level, they need to fight hard fights now. Like when it doesn't matter. It's like your middle school GPA. Who gives a fuck? Like it's your middle school GPA. It's going to restart in high school, and their high school GPA matters to get to college, just like their pro record matters to get to the UFC.
Yeah.
So that's when we started really changing things. Was that like a year before he passed? But then once he passed, that was a dream big moment. It was like time to have a pro show, and once we did one, it was like, all right, now it's just. I almost felt like we started over in business. It was like, all right, now we got to figure out how to save money. Now we got to figure out how to sell more tickets, or how to do this, or how to do that. And now I think we've had, I would say, close to 30, and we crush them. I mean,
that's awesome.
just nothing to me. Nothing comes close. I had a friend. Actually, he's a coach over at Fusion Excel. His name's Edwin Carmichael. He came up to me and said, "Hey, man, I just want to tell you, bro. I went to your show in Jacksonville on May 6th, and I went to the UFC show on June 24th." And he was like, "No one can do it like you, man." He's like, "Even the UFC, the energy in the building that you guys are able to create and that you guys like make happen, it's like it's magical, bro." He's like, "It's just magical." Because I don't know how to explain it, but it's just something different. And he was just like, "You got something real special." And I was like, "Hell yeah!" Like that's the kind of stuff I want to hear. No, we're not the UFC. I don't pretend like we're the UFC or that we're Bellator or any of the other stuff. But like, I want people to walk away from our events, whether they're fighting or whether they're a fan, and just feel like they were a part of a magical night. Like it was something special.
Such a great name too, yeah. Combat Night MMA. I love it. It's just like, it feels like a event just saying it. Like I'm going to Combat Night.
It's so funny when we were coming up with that name. We were sitting there in the car and we were like, and Josh actually, he was like, we were playing with Combat and Night and MMA and like extreme, like all these different words that like involve like cage fighting, and he was like, Combat Night, and I was like, it's pretty basic. He was like, yeah, it's simple. And I was like, I mean, I like it. Let's do it.
Yeah.
And now you hear the name Combat Night, and it's just like, I don't know, it's like synonymous with like fighting. Like it's like, yeah, that's MMA in Florida. So it's at the time it was like we were just both thought it was like super basic, and like we didn't have to worry about what we were worried about was like search engine optimizers and stuff. Like if we use Ultimate or if we use fighting, it's like we're not gonna get really anything off of that. It's funny, like while we were so inexperienced in business, we made a lot of really smart and good decisions.
That is a really forward-thinking decision, thinking about the search engine optimization of it. That is smart. What are some of the biggest differences having gone from amateur to pro fighting, like in terms of actually like setting up the event and putting on the event? Like what are the major differences that you've come across?
The biggest differences are everything costs more. Insurance costs more. Now you have to work with the state of Florida Boxing Commission. They're expensive. You have to have their judges, their refs. They're doing all of the, I guess you'd say, like fighter safety, anything in regards to fighter safety, like the refereeing, the doctors. They handle all of that now. And there's no hustling or negotiating of prices with them. It's like, This is what you pay. That's it. But the running of the event, it's no different now. At first it was very different. There's a lot of like little rules, like they make you take a break between the amateur and the pros, a 30-minute break. There's more medicals required. There used to be, now there's not. But a lot of little things, nothing really big. The biggest thing is you spend a lot more money. So it's like literally 5 times the amount of an amateur show.
That's a lot, yeah.
And it's not like these people, like say Billy's fighting for us, and Billy fought for us as an amateur 3 months ago, and Billy sold 20 tickets. Now Billy's going pro. He's still selling 20 tickets, but now we're paying him. The insurance for his fight is more, and we have to pay the state to have that fight happen. So it's like, even though Billy's going pro, it's like the income for that fight, for Billy fighting, we don't sell more tickets because he's a pro now. It's still 20 tickets. We just have to spend 5 times more money.
And the tickets are probably going to have to cost more, so it might be harder to sell them in the first place.
We do our tickets for the same price.
Do you really?
Pro or amateur.
Really?
Yeah.
That's impressive. I wouldn't have guessed that.
Yeah.
Hey, but you just sell more.
Yeah, we do.
You just have to
venues.
sell more.
We do
Okay,
bigger
that
venues
makes
for the pros.
That makes sense. Okay.
Yeah,
That's cool.
Yeah, there's no different. Like for all of our shows, pros and Amis are usually all the same. There used to be like towns like we struggled in Jacksonville, man. We went to Jacksonville for 5 years before we made money there.
Really?
Every show we'd be like, we're done. Fuck this town. Jacksonville's horrible. I don't want to come back here. And then like a week later, we're like, all right, when's our next Jacksonville show? And it's funny because Jacksonville now has our most prospects are out of Jacksonville. Like
Interesting.
We have, Stephen Kossel's in the UFC. Trey Waters is in the UFC. Preston Parks is in the UFC. Austin Lane's in the UFC. Ramon Tavares is fighting on the Contender. Will be in the UFC soon. And all those guys are from Jacksonville. Not just from Jacksonville, but like they literally were. Some of these kids were like 16. They were helping set up our cage in Jacksonville. And
That's
now
cool.
they're in the UFC fighting. So it's like it's our worst town for money, but we just stuck with it and kept going and figuring it out. And now it's our biggest town for prospects.
It's growing fast too. I'm actually from Jacksonville. That's where I grew
nice.
up and everything. So I've seen it grow from like.
How old are you?
I am 26 now. Yeah.
Okay.
So
Do you know Stephen Koslow by any chance?
I don't know.
I know
Is he around that
that's
same
a big
age?
place.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It's the biggest city land-wise in the United States, like in terms of actual size,
Yep.
and it's growing so fast the last couple of years. It's funny because I moved there first when I was like 4 years old, and I lived there almost my whole life until college, and I've just seen it grow so much, even just since leaving for college. It's a completely different city.
I mean,
so
same. I really feel like Jacksonville is like the city that we grew with. Because when we went there, man, there's a couple other shows there. We had so much hate. People did not want us to be there. Like in promoting and in fighting, like fighting's a really weird thing. I get along with a bunch of promoters, and I don't get along with a bunch of promoters. There's no real sense of community amongst other fight promotions for the most part. It's like
seen more as competition.
It's very much competition. And even some of my best friends, Daniel Donaldson, he runs a show, Rise of a Warrior, the one that I copied essentially Combat Night from. Even him, like we're competitive with each other, but we don't hate on each other. There's a difference. Like you can be competitive and not hate, or not just want to see someone else fail. That's the weirdest thing to me about business in general is like there's so much food on the table. Like you don't have to take someone's food off their plate. Like go get your own shit. Like go figure it out. And instead of like looking at my plate and being jealous or being mad about what I got on my plate, ask me how I got it.
Exactly.
Talk to me about how I got it. Like me
it's
and
the
Donaldson,
abundance mindset.
Yeah, me and Donaldson. Like there's a couple of promotions that we bounce things off of. Dean Tool, like we talk about, I just did this. You should try that. Blah 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 blah. Oh, all right, cool. Like there's no reason. Again, there's plenty of food on the table. I don't know how many people are in the city of Orlando or the city of Tampa or Jacksonville or Miami, but I would imagine that you could do an event every week, an MMA event every weekend, and manage to sell it out if you know how to promote and if you know how to do your job correctly.
Let's get into that a little bit, promoting. I want to talk about because obviously you promote professionally. That's like at one of the highest levels what you do. What are some of the principles that you've learned over the years that go into good promoting? Like what goes into successful promoting for an event?
For an event in general, I'm not real. I'll give you what for fighting for MMA event. I know that's probably what you meant anyways. But I think number one is you're taking care of the people that are making it happen. Our fans are high up on the list, but they're not number one. Our number one concern are the fighters and the athletes and the coaches. We don't want to put the fans above them. We don't want to put ourselves above them. I fought for plenty of promotions, and I can promise you, majority of the time, I might have been like 5th on the list of like order of importance. So I think our key to success has been the people who make the show happen, the fighters, our team. Like we keep those guys number one. I would say the fighters and my team are right there next to one another, but my team also keeps the fighters number one. Our motto, our mantra is fighters first. That simple. Everyone that works for my company or that is involved in my company, with the exception of literally one person, is a fighter, has been a coach. They understand what it feels like to cut weight, then fight. They understand the nerves, the adrenaline, all of these things. And I think that that's something that gives us a huge advantage, being able to put ourselves in their shoes because we've literally been in their shoes before. But for a successful fight promotion, you got to take care of the fighters first and foremost, and that's hard. It's a hard concept to put into practice because, I'll go print 100 shirts, and I fully expect to give away 75.
Mm-hmm.
I go to weigh-ins. Any fighter can attest to this. I start handing out shirts. We got nice, fanny packs, little backpacks, you name it. Fighters, I give it all away. It's like, we go to weigh-in. Sometimes I'm giving away, typical weigh-in, I'm probably giving away 1,000 plus in merch. And that's a big one for me because I can't tell you how many times I went to a promoter and asked him for a free event shirt. First of all, I don't know, you should never, if someone asks you for something for free that just fought for you for free, how are you going to tell that person they need to go pay $20 or pay $40? Because amateurs aren't getting paid. So that's a big one for me, is taking care of the fighters and the fans, taking care of the people I work with, or the fighters on my team, but also the venues we work with. I consider every venue we work with a partnership. I don't look at them as a separate entity or screw them or whatever. I don't care what they think. I want them to be successful too. I want them to sell alcohol. I want them to have a good night, but I won't jeopardize the running of my show for them to sell alcohol. So I see, again, fighters first, and I know fighters want to fight, and all the fans came there to see fights. So I'm not one of these promoters that put those in 5 intermissions. Go grab a drink, go do this, go do that. Nah, you came to watch fights, you're going to watch fights. Mm-hmm. So I give the fans what they want and the fighters what they want.
Yeah.
As well as running a successful promotion, I think, I see a lot of guys getting into the reasons they're doing it is for their ego, for themselves. They want to they're the big man, they're the show, they're getting in the ring, grabbing the mic, talking repeatedly, and it's man, this is not about you.
Yeah.
It should always be about I go back to the fighters. It should be about the fighters. But I do think a lot of guys are promoting events because they want their ego to be, boosted, and they want to be the big guy and the person who put it all together. I could care less. And when Josh was around, I really wasn't a face at all. Josh was very much the face, and I was very happy doing the work behind the scenes and just making sure everything came together and it all worked out. Again, the fighters should be number one. So I think everything I say is just going to resort back to fighters being number one. I think if you can really find a way in every situation to always think I'm putting the fighters first, you're going to be successful. But a lot of times I almost feel like this is going to sound mean, but when it comes to most promotions, I almost feel like I'm at such a huge advantage. These guys have no idea what they're doing.
Yeah.
And there are a few that really get it and really understand it, but the guys that I don't get along with or that I bump heads with, it's I hate it because I see things they're doing wrong, and it's so obvious. It's man, how do you even think that's the right thing to do? You're clearly not putting your athletes first in this situation. But I guess lucky for me.
Yeah, I've heard recently from some of my friends that follow a lot more than I do that there's been some controversy recently and a lot of problems with the UFC in particular, just because fighters don't feel like they're getting taken care of. They don't feel like they're getting paid enough. They don't feel like they're being put first. And that seems like, the fighters are the ones that are making the event a thing. Mm-hmm. They're really the ones that are promoting for you and promoting the entire thing. It seems kind of like you would have to take care of them. And that really shines through in what I've heard about Combat Night. Our mutual connection, Mikey, was telling me about how the operation runs from a fighter's perspective. Mm-hmm. He's fought in a couple, and he was just saying, yeah, man, Mitch takes care of us. He really, really takes care of us, and we feel that, and it makes us want to be a part of it.
Yeah, and that's what we're trying. We're trying to build a community, more so than just a fight promotion.
Mm-hmm.
I forget what the post was recently. Someone did something. Oh, it was Austin Lane. He gave a little interview, and he kept saying we. He was talking about Combat Night, but he wasn't saying Combat Night or they or them. It was we.
Yeah.
And I was like, damn, that feels so good to hear. This guy's played in the NFL for the Jacksonville Jaguars. He's in the UFC. He just made his debut in Jacksonville, and I can't tell you of all the shit he said, it was all very heartwarming to me to hear for him to say that. But the most heartwarming part of that was it was we. So it's that lets me know we're building a community here, and we're not just another fight promotion. He really feels like he's a part of the Combat Night community. That's the goal. Like I said, I think a little bit ago, it's not about having a fight promotion and all this other stuff. It's really just about building that community and giving these guys, mentorship so that they can get to places that I never got, or they can achieve things that I never achieved. I can tell you, like, I know one day we're going to have a world champion for us. I know one day someone from Combat Night is going to make it all the way to the top. Not just someone. I think we have a few guys that have the ability to make it all the way to the top. And I think, that's just, I mean, I'm going to be thrilled when that happens. It's going to be dope. Like, there's going to be no jealousy or no, like, I don't feel like I deserve anything because I helped on a part of their journey where I feel like, I've literally heard other promoters, like when a fighter gets signed, like get offended because they weren't thanked. And it's like, well, it's their moment. It's not your fucking moment. Like, who cares if you didn't get thanked?
You're a promoter. You're supposed to focus on the promotion.
Exactly. And if they make it to the next level, and if you did your job correctly and you helped them out and you really were there for them, they'll thank you. And it doesn't need to be a public post. It can be a text message. It can be a, whatever. Like, again, though, that's where I think a lot of people who are doing these promotions, they really make it about themselves instead of the athletes.
You talk to, promote, mentor, learn about so many fighters, and you're a fighter yourself. What are some of the things, because you mentioned like a potential world champion, the thing that comes to mind when I think about a champion in anything is you have to have a pretty incredible mindset, obviously, to be able to get to that point. What are some of the things that you've observed go into having the kind of mindset that it takes to succeed in the highest levels of fighting?
I think the biggest things are probably consistency and discipline. Consistency isn't, unless you have the discipline, I don't think consistency matters either. Like, you have to be consistent about the things that you don't want to do and the things you do want to do. I know guys that train and bust their ass, and they're so consistent with their training, but they're so undisciplined with their diet. Or they're so undisciplined with their rehab and their recovery. Discipline to me is not really about, it's not about doing the things that you love to do. That's not discipline. If you love training, so you're there every day, you can't say, I'm disciplined about training. Well, no, you love it. What do you mean? You enjoy it. Discipline is doing the things consistently that you don't enjoy. So if,
because you know that you have to do them
because you have to
be
do
successful.
Them. Yeah, it's like, that's discipline. Discipline's not, for me, it was dieting, right? I hated dieting. I hated it with a passion. And because I was not disciplined in that area of my life and my fight career, I definitely point my finger at that as like where I fell off with fighting, why I didn't do as well as I probably could have because I wasn't disciplined in my diet. For a lot of people, it's like partying. They train really super hard, they bust their ass all week, and then on the weekend they go out and party and drink and do all these things that I promise you TJ Dillashaw's not doing. I promise you Khabib's not doing. I promise you maybe John Jones is doing. So there's some guys that can get away with that, right? But they're like less than 1%. It's not, you can't look at Conor McGregor and think, I'm going to act like Conor McGregor before I get there, because you'll never get there. But definitely discipline and consistency are the two main. I've seen guys that were super talented and had everything it took to get there and still not get there because they weren't disciplined or consistency. And then I've seen guys who weren't that talented that were very disciplined, very consistent, and never faltered, never, just always grinding, make it. I mean, I've literally been told by guys like, oh, that guy doesn't have a chance. That guy's not going to make it. That guy's 6-0 in the UFC right now. Shut your ass up.
Because of the consistency and discipline.
Yep.
To use an example from a different sport, Kobe Bryant was known for kind of coming in and not being, I think in high school, maybe even in the NBA, not being one of the best in his teams, but just being the guy that would practice literally 3 times a day, every day, when everyone else was practicing 1. And he just caught this momentum from that and just eventually caught up to everyone who was way more naturally talented. And by the time that they realized he was passing them, he was long gone. And
it's too late.
You just catch momentum doing that and having the consistency and the discipline. You catch this momentum that is unstoppable, I think.
No, it's true. And, I see this all the time in the gym, man. I'll see a new guy come in who's not that great. Maybe he's a little athletic, but he's like very green. He's not that good. And the guy who's been there for 3 years, 4 years is whooping that guy's ass. Just giving it to him, right? Mm-hmm. And it's like the cycle. Everyone has to go through that ass whooping phase. And then a year goes by, and that guy was real dedicated, real disciplined, real consistent. I always saw him in the gym. The other guy, he misses a week, comes back, fights, doesn't come back for 3 months, and then comes back when he has another fight camp going on, not very good. And then that guy who's got a quarter less training in theory of time, but no, he trains every day. And he's there 52 weeks out of the year. You're only here 30 weeks out of the year, so he's catching up to you. So a year and a half, 2 year come up, and now he's beating the guy that used to whoop him. And it's just like, man, like, how does that make you feel? It can't feel good. And it's like, oh, that guy's gotten really good really quick. And it's like, nah, bro, you should be a lot better than him right now. But he stayed consistent and he stayed disciplined. And because of that, he's being rewarded now and he's whooping your ass. And once they get to that point, like you said, there's no catching up. It's just too late.
You mentioned that discipline is not wanting to do the thing, but doing it anyway.
Yep.
What is the internal dialogue that you have in those moments personally when there's something that you don't want to do, but you know you have to do it? What's the internal dialogue that gets you to do it anyway?
I'm a shit talker. So just by nature, if you train with me, if you work with me, everyone knows that I'm a shit talker. I'm just going to talk smack all day. Like if I feel like you're faltering or like you are slacking, like I'm not quiet about it. Like anyone on my team is slacking, I'm going to give them shit. I'm going to call them out, and I'll call them out in front of the whole place. I'm no different with myself. I told you before I came in today, I went and lifted over at CrossFit Tough as Nails, and I hate lifting. It's not my thing. You look at me. I'm a weenie. I'm small.
You're in great shape.
I'm in great shape, but I also weigh 150 pounds. You know what I mean? Like I'm not some big massive guy. You can tell I'm not on juice. I'm not lifting weights. So for me, that's my hardest area to be disciplined in right now is weightlifting. I know the older I get, the more I need to have that for my bone density and like just overall health. You know, you want to be lifting. MMA is great. That training is great for cardio, but I have to do some strength training as well. My inner dialogue in those moments, and I talk about it, I mean, every story you ever see about weightlifting, I'll say it. I hate this. I can't stand this. The whole drive there, I'm telling myself, like, just when you get there, do shadow boxing, do this, do that. Anything fight related, I love doing. But when I'm there, it's literally talking shit to myself. Like, don't be a bitch. Don't fucking stop. Like, you can fucking do more. You know you can. Like, you know, when I'm picking up the weight and it's like there's a 35-pound dumbbell and there's a 50-pound dumbbell and there's a 60-pound dumbbell. I'm like, I know I did 50 pounds last week. I can do 50 for sure. And then I get through 2 sets and my body feels good. And it's like, don't be a bitch. Go grab that 60-pound dumbbell. So I'm talking shit to myself the whole time. But I will tell you that when I walk out of that place, I always feel better than whenever I walked in. Like, regardless of how sore I am or how much I'm pouring in sweat, you know, doing the things that I don't like to do but I know are good for me, I always feel great after the fact. But trust me, on Friday morning when I go back into that gym to work out, I'm going to hate every minute of it. I'm going to talk shit to myself every second of it. I'm going to call myself a bitch probably 5 times. But I'll get through it, and I'll feel better after the fact.
Sometimes, like, avoiding the pain is a more motivating force, just, like, harnessing, like, the negative forces. I've heard that talked about a lot lately. Harnessing, like, that negative force can be way more powerful than harnessing a positive force. And I think that's a thing that people kind of forget, and I think it's a really good thing to take advantage of. And I totally agree with the you know, just coming out and feeling so much better after a workout. I've been struggling recently with lifting because it's not that I don't love doing it. I have always loved fitness since I got into it, but I've struggled so much with consistency lately for it because I'm in the middle of building a big, like, starting and launching a business right now. And so it's like the thing that I feel like I have to prioritize. And I walked out of the gym this morning and I was talking to my girlfriend and I was saying, I feel fantastic. And she was like, you always say that when you come out of the gym. Like, you always say that you feel great. You've got to stick to it. And you get this incredible feeling just doing hard things that you know you have to do.
You got to do hard things, man. Like, the last place I want to be is comfortable. And, you know, you hear these guys like Jocko and Goggins and Joe Rogan and all these guys talk about, like, not wanting to be comfortable. And it's just the most growth I ever see in my life is always when I'm the most uncomfortable. It never fails, whether it's doing the pro show that I never did before, whether it's you know, working out. I just don't want to be. I'm uncomfortable. I'm like, I could do anything else but this. Whether it was jujitsu, whenever I didn't understand the sport that well and they had me in side control or full mount and they're like beating the crap out of me. That's not comfortable. But showing up and doing it again the next day, and showing up and doing it again and continuing to do it, that's why I see my most growth, 100%.
And finding that growth, I feel like brings you just this life force. Like there's no better, like, more empowering life force than feeling yourself growing and getting better at something. Like,
feels
it's
good.
just, it feels so good, right? like feeling yourself tangibly, physically just improve and seeing the feedback that you get.
And I think fitness is probably one of the few areas where you can really see that in like a short period of time. It doesn't take long, like whether it's picking up a heavier weight, hitting a submission on a guy that you weren't able to hit on ever before. It's like you can really see these things in fitness. In boxing, it's like landing a jab on somebody that you've never landed a jab on. It's like you can really see your improvements. So that's why it's so weird to me that more people don't fall into the fitness routines, because I know how good it feels to hit a goal or to feel the improvement. And I see that. I mean, almost every week, I'm improving my game somewhere. It could be my top game, my bottom game. It could be, my boxing, my Muay Thai. But I'm going to see some kind of improvement somewhere. Mm-hmm. And it feels good to see that. It feels good to feel that.
I think like anything, fitness, you have to hit this kind of initial curve at the beginning. You have to kind of get over this hump where you feel like you're just terrible at this thing. And you feel like, how do I possibly get any better? I think you have to get over this initial hump, and I think a lot of people get stuck on that. And I think that goes for business too. I think it goes for kind of anything that you're trying to get better at. When have you seen moments like that in your life where you had this completely new pursuit and you just got over that hump eventually and you saw yourself just kind of expand on the other side?
I think in everything I've done, I mean, whether it was my black belt in jiu-jitsu, whether it was combat night, whether it's my family, it's like, having kids is probably one of the greatest things to ever happen to me. Like, I know for sure I was supposed to be a dad. If I don't do anything else in my life, this is the coolest thing I'll probably ever do, is being a dad. And being able to like see life through their eyes. Like, I watched my kid struggle to crawl for weeks. I watched them struggle to walk for weeks. It's like it's a reminder that like, I was that at one point in time. Now I'm running and I'm kicking ass. So I don't ever get like, I'm not one of these people. I've failed plenty of times, but it doesn't discourage me. It doesn't upset me. And I know a lot of people, it can and it will deter them and like, whatever, I'm not going to do it all together. But I mean, everything I've done that's worthwhile, I failed initially, or maybe I failed multiple times at it, Jiu-jitsu, I remember as a white belt, like my instructor, and now it's like, I look back at this moment, and it's like one of the best moments I was ever told in my life. He looked at me. I just put a purple belt to sleep. And the school was a little young. This is like 10 years ago. I put a purple belt to sleep with a guillotine. A guillotine is like, for traditional jiu-jitsu guys, is like kind of an ugly move. Wrist locks, guillotines, footholds are like just ugly jiu-jitsu. Mm-hmm. And at the time back then, it really was like even more so. Now it's a little different. New age, new school thought. But put him to sleep. He walks over and like he like kind of kicks him a little bit. He's like, hey, wake up. And like a guy comes to him, like looks at him, and he's like, man, what is this? And he's like, huh? It's like out of it. He's like, Mitchell, go to the wall. And I was like, oh shit, I'm in trouble. Like, I just put this purple belt to sleep. I'm in trouble. I go sit on the wall. The round's over, and he put everyone on the wall, and he was picking out who's gonna go with who next. He doesn't pick me for anyone. So I sit there for a little bit, and I was like, damn. All right, he's mad. And then round's over. Picks walls again, everyone out. I'm one to speak my mind. I'm like, hey. He's like, what's up? And I was like, I'm like, did I do something wrong? Like, what's up? He's like, no, you have ugly jiu-jitsu. Your jiu-jitsu is ugly. Like, I don't want to see you anymore on top. No more on top. Like, the jiu-jitsu is ugly. And I was like, okay. So after class, and he says this like loud, like it's like, just says it loud. After class, I go to him like, hey man, I was like, well, what do you want me to see? What do you want to see from me then? And I was like, you don't want me on top, and you want me to play guard? And he's like, yeah, I want you to play guard from now on. So I don't want to see you on top anymore. And I was like, all right, because I was a wrestler going into it.
Okay. So that was like your natural disposition.
To be on top. So I was like, all right, here we go. I'm just going to play the guard from now on. I'm going to pull guard, maybe on my back. And man, like for 6 months, exclusively what I would do. If I swept somebody, I would find a way to get back on bottom, to sweep them again, or to work again. And at the time, I was super offended that day. I was very offended, and I was like upset. I was like, damn, man, like here I am, like submitting a purple belt. I'm a white belt, and like I'm doing what I feel is right. I'm winning, but I wasn't improving. I was just continuing to do what I do.
Right.
And he saw that, I can look back now and see that's what he saw, that like I wasn't really improving. I was just doing what I was good at. So that's why he wanted me to be doing guard. And for me, that was a big moment. That changed my jiu-jitsu game. Like that 100%, that conversation, that moment of feeling like a failure and like I was just, I shouldn't be doing jiu-jitsu, turned into, why I'm so good at jiu-jitsu now.
How do you recognize for yourself when you're doing something right, but you should still change and do something else because you're not improving?
Bro,
It's a tough question.
It's not for me, man. I don't think there's ever. I'm not comfortable. Again, I don't like being comfortable. So I'm always looking to improve and always looking to get better. And I don't think I'm ever gonna fall into that trap. I'm not gonna say I will never, but I don't think I will, because I'm constantly trying to get better. Even these events, man, like, you know, I'm always looking to improve something small, something little. Like, what can I do more over here? What can I do better over here? At the end of every event, the team's talking. We're trying to figure out what could have been done better, what wasn't done right, or what did we do that didn't really work out. Like, oh, we tried that, but it wasn't really, we weren't feeling it. Do we tweak it? Do we get rid of it? What do we do? I don't really, I mean, I know that might sound a little weird, but I just don't allow myself to be comfortable. And anyone that's around me, you can ask literally anybody. I am hard on those around me. I am so hard on those around me because I want to see them be successful. I want to see them do great things in their life. Most of it is in the fight game, but there's fighters that I still mentor and talk with that decided not to fight anymore. They're doing something else with their life, and as long as they're being successful and they're happy and they're doing what they love, I'm happy for them. I could go on days about that, but yeah, I'm as hard as I am on everyone around me, I'm 10 times harder on myself and my fiance. Brandy gets a help. She hates it, but I'm like always talking about growth. I'm always on her ass about growth. She told me recent things. She told me she needed to start working out again. We had our baby girl. She came 17 weeks early. She was a 23-week-old micro preemie. She weighed a pound.
Wow.
October 6th, 2 years. This October 6th will be her 2-year birthday. She's supposed to be born on January 28th. So at that age, you don't have, like, your lungs aren't open, all kinds of health issues. We were in the hospital for 4 months with her, taking care of her and, like, trying to figure out life. And Brandy fell off from training. Brandy fell off from, like, working out. Understandable, yeah, by all means. But I heard her a couple times say, I want to start working out again. I need to start getting back in the gym again. And I heard it for like the 4th time, and I was like, all right.
Do it.
Stop talking about it. Like, we have a gym right here at the house, and she's like, a right away excuse, which is natural. Most people, I think, their first instinct to someone trying to push them to grow or be better is an excuse of why I can't grow or be better. Psh, I got rebuttals for days. Like, we go at it, and then she's like, all right, tomorrow I'm going to start working. I'm like, no. The gym's right there. Go work out. She's like, you're right. She goes and works out. She's like, I feel so much better.
Yep.
And now she's been on the routine for a few weeks. She's like, I just feel so much better. Like getting in the sauna and doing everything, for her also, not just her physical, but mental wellness as well. I'm just hard on everybody around me, man. And it's so funny, like sometimes like my team will be like, man, like I feel like you're on my ass today. And I'm like, man, just be happy you ain't got to live with me. That's it. Like, as hard as I am on you, I promise you, I'm harder on Brandy and myself. And I want her to be hard on me too. If I'm faltering or if I'm not doing something that I said I was gonna do, I'm with a woman that I know is gonna tell me, like, yo, tighten your shit up.
Yep.
She's not gonna let it fester. She's not gonna let it like grow into something it shouldn't be. She's gonna tell me to tighten my shit up, and I'm gonna respect that, and I'm gonna do that.
What is the biggest thing that you're trying to work on and improve in your own life right now, like going forward?
Something you experienced today, being timely. Being on time for
stuff. You were a couple minutes late.
I know, but I promise you it's a problem. I put too much on my plate. That will probably never change. I'll always be this person that, like, I don't want to make a second trip to the buffet. I want to just get it all at once and sit down and enjoy my food. And it's the same way in my life. You can ask anyone about the events we run. Like, sometimes we'll have 5 events in a 4-week period of time. Like, it's like event. Wow. I'm working for other people's events. I'm like, I'm also an event consultant for a company called Karate Combat. So like, and then I also, if one of my fighters gets in the UFC or one of my fighters fights on the Contender, I'm going to fly out and watch them. I got to support. So it's like, I just put too much on my plate, and then I don't really think about how I'm going to get it all down. But I do. I always figure out how I'm going to get it all down. But like, I got to get better with scheduling and timing. I'm really, really poor at that.
It's a tough thing. I'm struggling with a lot of the same myself. It's like like if you always have something to do, this is like a genuine just problem of the business owner, because you always have something to do. So I always find myself like working on something. I'm like, all right, I've got 10 minutes till I've got to, like, absolute latest till I've got to leave for somewhere, but I've also got 10 minutes of work to get done. So I'm going to get the work done so that I can then leave and go get the thing done. And then next thing you know, it's been 12 minutes. I'm like, fuck, like I gotta go. Like, there's always something to get done. It's hard not to, but it's also, it's kind of rewarding having a lot on your plate. It just, it constantly forces you to grow and get better and adapt. The biggest adjustment I'd say I've made this year is just starting to put stuff on the schedule immediately. I literally just like pull out the schedule, put something on, even if it's just following up with someone. I'm like, schedule right now, because it won't happen otherwise.
I need to get better at doing that. That's where I know I need to be scheduling stuff and just making those little reminder pops up. Hey, da. But man, I forget in the moment. And then I don't do it. Like, I'm thankful you sent me an actual. I thought you're gonna laugh. Remember I told you I thought it was 3:00?
Yeah.
I thought it was 3:00 last week.
Oh my God. Oh, well, we had talked about last week initially. Yeah.
But I knew it changed. I knew like after when I saw it, I was like, I knew that fucking changed. But I was like, that Wednesday. Wednesday's like one of my lifting days. I was like, oh, I gotta get to the gym early. I gotta do this. I was like, I'm gonna go ahead and put the phone in the address in my map so I know exactly where it's at. So I pulled up the invite and I put it in my maps, and then I went back to the invite because I ended or whatever, and I saw 2:00. I saw the date and I was like, wait a second, what is today? I was like, man, all right, that's next week.
Yeah.
So scheduling and my time is my biggest.
It took me, I'm going to see a therapist about 2 times a month right now, and it took to kind of like help me manage all the stuff on my plate and deal with some other stuff. I lost my dad a couple of years ago, and it took her probably telling me to start scheduling stuff like 30 or 40 times before I even like tried to start doing it. It was just like, sometimes it takes like so many reminders, and like someone's got to be hard on you about something before you can actually
all the time. It's all the time. You don't learn, we're hard-headed. Humans in general are hard-headed, and I think business owners are probably even more hard-headed. Otherwise they probably, I think that's a good trait to have in some sense, but especially when it comes to introducing something new, it's like, but everything, it's not efficient, but I'm doing it. Like, I got it figured out.
Exactly.
The timing thing's hilarious to me too. Anyone who's been to one of our events, anyone who's fought for us, they know. Like, if we say we're starting at 4:15, we're starting at 4:15. If they say, my team knows. Look, if I say we're going live for the pro show at this time, we need to make sure we're going live at this time. Yep. And we're very like punctual and very much like on top of that. And I can manage an event in my sleep. I'm so good at time management with an event. But personal life, out the window.
It's funny how that happens. I feel the same way about this podcast. It's like, everything is down to a T, like things get done on time, but then like same thing, personal life. It's like, all right, well, I've got the other stuff that I've got to get done for business and for the podcast and everything. And if that doesn't get done, then nothing else is getting done.
Yeah. It's the hardest thing is that working out too. Like working out, because you tell yourself, you're like, man, I worry about this later. I'll work out later today. I got to get this done. Or you go work out and then you're thinking about what you need to get done in business the whole time. So it's like, sometimes the workouts aren't even enjoyable because I've allowed myself. I had to like literally figure out a routine. Like, I try to go early enough and not start doing business before I go, because if I start, it's over. I'm gonna be at the gym the whole time, like picking up my phone, sending stuff, doing things, and it's like, it's not even. I'm getting the workout in, but I'm not getting the mental. Like, that's for me. The mental clarity is the biggest part of working out. Like the physical stuff, it's obviously I enjoy that too, but that mental clarity of just not having to think about work for an hour. Yeah. Not having to worry about something falling apart or something happening. Like, put my phone on silent, put it upside down, and don't look at it.
I totally agree with that. I'm terrible about that too. I was making a to-do list in the gym this morning for like for the day, and I wasn't really presently there in the workout. It felt like I was working, and my workout probably wasn't as good because of it. I think that's an important way to approach it. I gotta just stop working out with music or something. Like, just work out like in silence and just be there. Be present.
Same thing. I don't do music anymore. Like, I'll listen to a podcast if I am like during my cardio workout. I might do some like a podcast for 30 minutes. But I try to remind myself too. Like, one of the biggest things I think, and I don't think I'm the only business owner that struggles with this, but it's twofold. Rome wasn't built in a day, and it wasn't destroyed in a day. So I can step away from my business for 2 hours for myself, for my family, and it's not going to fall apart. If something happens, it's not, you don't have to address every issue right when it happens. And that's always been like my fault. Probably a big reason why we've grown as well as we've grown too, because, someone messages me about a fight or wanting to do something, I'm addressing it, boom, 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 right away. And really in the past year, I've tried to take a step back and be like, I don't have to respond immediately. I don't have to have my phone in my hand all the time. And I'm able to, like I said, Rome wasn't built in a day and it wasn't destroyed in a day. So especially for, that's really any business owner, man. I know guys that are new in business and they think, everything should be popping. The idea was great. 1 year in, I should be making money. And it's like, it took us 5 years, like 5 real hard years before we saw the fruits of our labor.
Yeah. It's an important thing to be reminded of. I always love hearing that from someone who's been in the game a long time, because it's so easy to get discouraged if you're early on in a business, and it really does. It takes so much time.
Very easy. I see guys all the time, man, who jump into business, and they have all these great grand ideas, and they're going to do this, they're going to do that. And I'm like, I was talking like, hey man, in theory though, like you need to, start small and like work your way up. Like don't jump in the deep end of the pool right away. Like jump in the kiddie pool first and then work your way up the deep end. And, I think our own ambition sometimes will cloud our judgment, and we think, I can jump in the deep end. And I've never been here before, but I'm going to jump right in, especially in our world, in MMA and in fighting, with promoters and stuff. I see guys coming new on the scene, and I almost know off rip, success or fail. Like if they come out in the scene and they're trying to put LEDs up and they're trying to do all this fancy stuff, and it's like, man. People see Combat Night now and they think like, we've done this all the time. We did not. Like we have grown. It's years of growth, 10, 11 years now, 160 events to get where we are. So anytime I see someone coming new in the game and they're trying to match what we're doing, it's like, you already messed up.
You're going to fizzle out fast.
You already messed up.
Yeah.
Because I know.
Because you got to be able to establish something that you can do consistently before you can take it up to a higher level and a higher level.
Yep.
It's very true. What is the biggest thing that you would like to see happen to improve Combat Night this year?
The biggest thing I would like to see happen to improve Combat Night this year, man, I've had a lot of conversations about this over the last couple of weeks, because I feel we're a little stagnant in growth. And that is probably my most uncomfortable feeling, is stagnant. I just don't like the idea of like, every year we do something. Maybe we add pro shows. Maybe we put an LED screen up and we're adding to our production. We were just talking about cameras earlier. We upgraded our cameras for the pay-per-view. For growth this year, my goal is a TV deal. So we have a pay-per-view right now that is ran through us. It does great. We've talked to multiple streaming platforms. We've had offers from even some of the major ones like UFC and Fight Pass, but I also want my worth. I want my value. I don't feel like I think we bring a lot to the table, and so we'll sit out here until I feel like we find something that also sees our value and that we can be a part of. But that's the big goal for this year. By the end of the year would be some sort of streaming deal locked in. We got a lot of big stuff happening behind the scenes. I'm not somebody that likes to talk about, big news coming, or this is going to happen, or we got this, until there's some paperwork signed and everything's in place. My mouth stays pretty shut, but the end of this year, I won't be happy if we end this year and we don't have a TV deal or a major streaming deal in place that's paying us our value. Because to me, it's like, some of these streaming deals, they're offering like $45K, right? And to someone who's not in the business, or to a fighter, or to someone who's not a promoter, even maybe some other promoters are like, $45K, why wouldn't you take that? And it's like, all right, well, that $45K includes, a $15,000 in production bump. So I got to spend $15,000 more just in production.
Yeah.
And then they want
to make it the kind of level that it needs to be at
for the streaming platform.
Yeah.
Because I will say our production right now, like our lighting and stuff, isn't TV lighting. Because why would we pay for TV lighting if we don't have TV or streaming? So like, okay, you want me to spend 20 grand on raising the production value of our event. Okay, cool. Now we're down to 25,000. Oh, you want me to stream on a Thursday night? You want me to do my event on a Sunday night? You want me to do my event on any night but Saturday night, because that's when the UFC is having their events. It's like, okay, so now I'm losing 5 to 10 grand in ticket sales.
Yeah.
Okay, my pay-per-view no more. I don't get my pay-per-view anymore. So now I'm losing 5 to 10 grand in pay-per-views. all right, where are we at now? We got like 5 or 10 grand left.
Mm-hmm.
The fighters want to get paid more. My team wants to get paid more. If everyone's having to do more work to make that event happen, and now I pay my team and maybe I pay the fighters a little bit more money, and what's left? Nothing.
Yeah.
And it's like, to me, that's
Can't
not a
be
success.
in that position.
No, that's not a win. And then I got a boss. Someone telling me
Mm-hmm.
when I can and can't do shows.
Yep.
And then someone owns my content, like the most valuable part. So like I'm essentially getting paid nothing for valuable content. Let's say I have the next Conor McGregor fighting for me, and he fights for me 10 times on UFC Fight Pass. Well, guess what? All of the next Conor McGregor's fights are owned by UFC Fight Pass. They're geniuses for doing what they're doing.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense from a business perspective for them
to
look for those types of deals.
For sure. But for me, it's like, we got to get our worth, and our worth is, I'll be happy if I don't make another dime. If I stay where I'm at right now in business and my money, I'm completely happy. I'm not one of these guys that is going and buying new vehicles all the time or boats or anything like that. I'm really happy at where I'm at in life right now. If I can just find a way to make the fighters that fight for me more money and my team more money, I'm happy. So unless a deal comes across the table that does that for me, where I can go, okay, cool, I can pay my team now, I can pay the fighters now more money, I'm just not interested. And I feel like that'll come by the end of the year.
I think so. It sounds like you're incredibly motivated, and there's already stuff in the works that could come to fruition. That's exciting. What is like any personal goals that you have for 2023? Anything that comes to mind, like aside from like combat related things? You mentioned, like, we were talking about your family earlier. I know that's become a massive part of your life, and I wanted to circle back to that a little bit too, because I had one question that I forgot to ask earlier. You said that you always felt like or not always did, but you said that you realized that you were always meant to be a dad. And I was curious, like, did you always like have that feeling, or was that something that kind of came later? Did you know that was going to be a thing for you?
I knew I was going to be a dad. I didn't know how much I was going to enjoy it. I thought the idea of having a mini-me, I don't know, Austin Powers comes to mind, right?
Yeah.
Like the idea of like a legit mini-me that I get to kind of mold and have fun with, and like, and then once he was born, it like even more so. It's like, man, this is like, I get to experience life again through his eyes, Do you remember the first car you ever got?
Mm-hmm. Of course.
How great did it feel?
Amazing.
Okay.
Incredible.
Did you feel that way when you bought your last car?
No.
Okay.
No.
Right?
Yeah.
So you get to see first time experiences through your children's eyes, and like getting to see those moments, like a balloon, everything first time trying pizza. Oh, pizza. It's like, that's when I knew, like, this is what I'm supposed to do the rest of my life. I'm supposed to be a dad. Like, this is it. And also, when I started realizing like how important me mentoring other people were, and trying to help them through their first experiences of fighting or their experiences of getting sponsorships or, whatever, because that was something I never had and I had to figure out on my own. Luckily I did, and I was very successful, but like 90% of fighters don't have that. They don't have that mentorship or just the ability to figure it out on their own. So, through being a dad, I also realized like, I can provide a lot of helpful insight, and I can help others get to where they want to be. But back to the dad thing, I go off on tangents a lot. I apologize.
Tangents are welcome here.
Yeah. But I would say it was that. Whenever I saw, obviously when my boy Caden was born for the first time, I got to see him. I'll never forget, man. It was like one of the most, it was like, it makes me want to like just cry thinking about it. But he comes out. It was crazy. I almost wasn't there for my son's birth. Quick story.
We got a fight?
Nope. My girl's in labor. I'm in the room. She's going through labor, all this stuff, whatever. And he's turned down, or I think it's called a face, where like basically it's like they can't come out. They got to turn the body. So sorry. He's trying to like turn the head. And it's like, baby's not turning. We're gonna have to take you in for a C-section. And that wasn't part of our plan. Our plan was, birthing plan was the A, B, C, D, E, F, G.
Right.
Hoping it all went, and everything was going great until labor came. So they're like, all right, Dad, we're gonna go prep her and get her ready. We'll kind of come grab you before we deliver. And then I'm sitting there, I'm like, it's been a long time. I'm sitting here for a good little minute. And then a nurse comes and she's like, all right, Dad, let's go.
Oh my God.
And I'm like, what? And I'm like running through the halls to like get in. I literally walk in, and like almost within like a minute of me walking in here, and I was like,
my
shit.
God.
So Brandy tells me after the fact that she had to ask where I was.
Oh my
And they had just forgot, which is understandable.
They're in the moment and trying to figure everything out.
Yeah, baby's livelihood, heart rate was going up, and all these things were happening. So like, I get it. Like, if I hadn't gotten in there, I wouldn't have got it. I would have blew up. I'd have been freaking out. But so they bring him out, and they're like, "Daddy, you want to come meet the baby?" So I got to see the baby first. They're like cleaning him up, and I walk over, and I was like, "Hey, Caden," and he was like crying, and he just like stops, turns, and like opens his eyes, like I know that voice.
Wow.
And that moment for me was just, I was like, hands down, like he really recognized my voice. He understood, he knew this is someone important in my life. But that was a big moment where I was like, oh yeah, I'm doing exactly what I'm supposed to be doing. But like, I also knew, as much as I wanted to be a dad, that, and as great as kids are, I had to wait. So, I didn't have we had Kaden when I was 30. And I think most people have kids in their early 20s. I think they're doing, I'm going to probably piss someone off, but I think they're doing themselves a disservice, and they're doing their child a disservice. Does it work out? 100%. Yeah, it works out. And not everyone is like this, but I would say the majority of people want to enjoy their early 20s. They want to party. They want to have a good time. They want to experience things. They want to travel. And having a kid, like, it's just hard to experience life for yourself, because especially being a fighter, I tell fighters all the time, like, what's the best piece of advice you could give me? Don't have a kid. Don't do it. Like, I didn't know who I was until I was 27, 28 years old. I think the same is for most women too. They don't really know who they are, maybe a little younger, 25, 24 years old. So if you're having a kid before you're 27, you don't even know who you are yet. And a lot of my friends, like Mikey is a good example. He's 29, and I listened to the last podcast, and it's like, motherfucker's figuring it out. Like, he's getting it now. And
I think we talked about that a little bit. It was so cool because I interviewed him last year, and then I interviewed him again this year. And he had a lot of stuff figured out last year already, but when I interviewed him this year, it was like, wow, like, so much has clicked for him. He is locked in. So it's cool to see. And
it's happened at his 28, 29. Like, that's when it's happening. So, a lot of my guy friends around me and a lot of the women around me in my life, like, I see that, that age, after you're 25, somewhere before you're 30, most people are figuring it out. So waiting to have my child was huge, because fighting is, you have to be selfish. If you're not going to be selfish as a fighter, if you're not going to do everything in your power to be the best in the world and what you think is the right thing to do, there's a good chance you're not going to be successful. I know a lot of guys that are training at gyms that they're not really feeling right now, like, oh, I don't know, I can't do this, I can't do that, or I don't feel like I'm growing, but they're family, and it's like, all right, cool, like, that's the attitude that everyone wants to have, is like, this is my family. But if you're not growing or you're not getting better, you should go have a talk with that instructor and to ask him, hey, what do I need to do to get better?
Right.
What, be selfish. Tell him, I need more of your time. And if they're not going to get that, then you need to go somewhere else where you can get that. So being a fighter, you're going to be very selfish. You got to be. And being a father, you got to be very selfless. So how do you pull off both at the same time? I mean, I couldn't do it. I know some guys do, and I've seen some guys pull it off. But in my opinion, while you're a fighter, you should be very, very selfish. You can ask Brandy, my wife. I told her very early on that she wasn't number one. I was like, I'm sorry, fighting is number one. I remember us when we first started dating, like 6 months in. It's time to go to the gym. She's like, oh, just snuggle with me. It's raining. Like, let's just sit here and snuggle. And I'm like, you can ask her. I look at her and be like, nah, I told you, fighting is number one, and please don't try to take that away from me. Like, fighting is gonna be number one, and if you push too much, you won't even be number two. Like, I just can't. I can't. Like, I'm a very driven and focused individual. When I want to do something, I'm doing it, and I don't lie. I don't sugarcoat it. I keep it very real. And it probably first year didn't really understand it, but then she really started understanding. Like, oh, okay. Fighting is number one, and doesn't mean that she was a far number two. Doesn't mean that I mistreated her or was unfair to her. It just meant that if she was gonna be part of my life, she just had to understand that fighting was it. And then once I had the kids, it's not anymore. It's just not about me. It's about them, and it's very selfless. So I don't know how guys can balance it, and I know some do, but for me, it's so difficult, especially to like hold that baby and like you're loving on the baby and like kissing this little like just bundle of joy. And then it's like, all right, time to go clock in and punch people in the face and murder them. simulate murder real quick. Bye, baby.
Yeah,
baby
right.
down and go. It's like it's a flip or it's a switch that got to be flipped, and it's hard. It's very hard. So
I don't think it's common that people can just flip that switch like that. I can't even flip it for business half the time.
Yeah, it's
I
hard.
would never try to start having a kid right now when I don't have things figured out with business because I'd struggle to switch that flip.
I'm thankful that we had Combat Night already built to some extent before he came. Like we had like three years of it roughly, 4 years of it roughly, because on the flip side of that, my baby girl came literally 2 years ago on October 6th, unexpected, super early. We had 4 events on the schedule. Literally 4 events, and
because you said she was about 4 or 5 months early. Wow.
Yeah, eyes fused shuts, no nipples, lungs not open. So they had to like put her on the highest. It's like I think it was like 400 breaths per minute, and it's like like trying to like slowly open her lungs. And we had an event the very next weekend.
Wow.
So like I'm in the hospital. The only event I've ever missed was that event. I missed that very next weekend. We didn't tell anybody because we just didn't want anyone to be, again, these events are about the fighters. These events are about the athletes and helping them get to the next level. And I didn't want everyone coming up to me and like, oh, hi, everything, so we kept it a secret until we got done with our run of events, and then we told everybody. But the one I missed, it was like I couldn't imagine if this was event number 1 or event number 7 or event number 8. It just wouldn't have been. I can't. I'm sure we would have figured it out, but it might not have been possible back then because everyone wasn't so.
You wouldn't have had a team built up.
Exactly.
You wouldn't have had things in place to be able to run without you.
And the same with like if you're trying to start a business and you're trying to start a family, it's like I would pick one or the other to go with because if you're gonna choose starting the family over starting the business, understand the business is gonna probably have to wait. If you really want to be successful at it, let it wait for a year and figure out the kid situation first.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I'm thankful I did it when I did it. Business was already going. But even now, I'm gonna be real, and this is like I don't want to sound like an asshole when I say this, but if I didn't have kids, I really do feel like Combat Night would be on a whole. I would just be on another level, But I mean, not in any world do I want a world where I don't have my kids. Like, there's not even a fucking chance in hell.
And you sound very at peace with where it's at and where it's still going.
Oh yeah, I mean I am, and some people say like, oh, my kids motivate me to do better, and man, they do in some senses, but
they also take a lot of time.
It takes a lot of time. Like they might motivate me, but I would. If I'm a business owner, I'm just starting a business, and you give me the option, hey, I'm going to give you motivation, or I'm going to give you 8 hours extra time in your day. I'm going to go, hey, let me take that 8 hours of extra time. Yeah. So it's like, they do. They motivate me, and they drive me to do better and be a better person. And I want them to have a great example to look up to. But at the same time, boy, it's a lot of work. And I say that I'm kind of a stay-at-home dad because our events are on the weekend. I was telling you earlier, like I have to get an office space so I can really be out of the house. I've got a wonderful... I say this all the time. If you really want to be a successful fighter, you got to find a good woman. A successful businessman, you got to find a good woman or no woman at all. It's either a good woman or no woman. And thankfully, I've got an amazing woman at home. Brandy, she's like, bro, I can't even begin to tell you, first of all, going through everything she went through with our baby girl, but keeping the house in order, finding a way to cook dinner in the process, finding a way to keep the house clean, finding a way to get the kids to, jiu-jitsu or baseball or, baby girl has had therapy every single day for the past 18, months. Sometimes twice a day. And Brandy finds a way to get to everything and do everything. So I can't, again, you got to have a good woman or no woman when it comes to being a fighter or being a businessman.
Wow. Yeah, that's some real shit. I agree, though. I mean, I have been very, very fortunate with my girl, and I don't think I could be doing it without that. I mean, it's really one or none.
Yeah. I mean, dude, the girl, a girl previous to her, I was just starting to fight and stuff, and she gave me this, like, stupid ultimatum. She was like, well, when are you going to be done with this silly fighting stuff? And I was like, it's before my first fight. It's before anything. I wasn't even sure if I really wanted to do that. It was like a long time ago. And I was like, what do you mean? She was like, I just, I'm not going to, I don't want to tell people I'm with a fighter. And I was like, don't got to worry about that, sweetheart.
You're not
you
anymore.
You ain't got to worry about that. But and then they see you be successful, and then they want to slide in your DMs. Hey, I saw you recently fought for Bellator, and it's like, yeah, I did. Silly fighting, huh?
Yeah.
I got a company now for 11 years. Silly fighting, huh?
It's back to that negative force. That stuff can drive you.
Yeah. I mean, I took a note right here, like turning something negative into the good. And it's, I see a lot of people who, my mom passed. So like right when we had our first event, I had to go back home, and I spent the last like 45 days of my mom's life just taking care of her. I told you earlier, I'm the black sheep in the family. So I'm the one that's kind of always got a crazy job that can work with me and fighting and can work with me. And we were planning our first event, January 21st. I went back home at the beginning of December. I took a fight January 1st as like a distraction, just something to do and like not be thinking about my mom so much. And then I go back home. I did my whole fight camp in the hospital, in the hospice. So like I'm taking care of her, hanging out with her. And then I'd go for like, she'd take a nap. I'd go for like an hour run, just running. And then my good friend Troy Worthen, who was from my hometown, he would meet up with me at night, like late at night, like 10 o'clock, 10:30. My boy Hoffa Santos, who runs a school in Lakeland too, would open up his gym for me. And Troy didn't train there, I didn't train there, but we'd go there and train. But like so many good things came out of that negative situation, my mom passing. We did our first combat night event. Our current matchmaker and the only matchmaker from the very beginning, Richard Cox, he was also matchmaking for that show that I was fighting on as a pro. And I remember him calling me and being like, hey, bud, like, I know what's happening to your mom. My mom had just got put in hospice, and my sister was like publicly telling everyone what's going on. I'm not that type of person. I like to keep things a little more close to my heart. And I guess he saw it, and he called me. He's like, hey, bud, you don't have to fight. Like, I'll find a replacement. Don't sweat it. No big deal. And I'm like, nah, bro. Like, I'm a man of my word. Like, if there's one thing I am, even if that word is going to cost me, or if that word is not going to put me in a good situation, I knew better than to open my mouth. Like, I opened my mouth and I said, I'm going to take that fight. I'm taking the fight. And it's my first cut to 125, but like me and Richard became like good friends off of that. I would say he's one of my best friends in the whole world. And then
you had to cut to 125 for that?
For the first time ever.
That's a big difference for you. You said you're like 150-ish right now?
Yeah, and back then I was walking like 155.
That's a big difference. Wow.
It was the worst, bro. It was like,
jeez.
I don't know if you've ever dealt with someone like passing close to you, like where it's like taking some time, but like everyone's bringing you food and like, sweets and like all this stuff. Food's comfort. Yeah. Food's comfort. And I'm sitting there.
And they mean well.
I can't eat any of it. So like I'm sitting there watching all this food, and then I'm also upset thinking of my mom. It was miserable, but as miserable as that like 45 days, 2 months were, I like look back at it, and that's like the growth that I saw in my life, and my ability to deal with like shitty situations like just grew so much. Like I made a choice back then. I was gonna stop drinking, and I was never a big drinker, but I got into a fight with one of my friends. He called his mom a bitch. And my mom's in the hospital, like, fighting for her life. I'm back home, and he calls his mom a bitch. And, no offense to his mom, but his mom's a bitch. Like, I mean, it is what it is. Like, not everyone has the same relationship with their mom that I have with my mom. My mom was my best friend. My fighter nickname was Mama's Boy. So I'm Mama's Boy. But, man, when he called his mom a bitch, like, it just triggered something in my brain. I had been drinking, and I just punched him right in the jaw. And, like, everyone grabs us. And he's like, what the fuck? And I'm like, no, fuck you. I'm like mad and stuff. And then later on, I'm like, I'm sorry, man. It's like my best friend. I'm like, I'm sorry, man. I shouldn't have done that. But at that moment, I was like, I'm done drinking. So I made a choice to stop drinking for a year. Ended up, I don't drink at all now. I might drink, my boy just got married in Mexico. I got drunk like 2 nights or maybe even 3 out of the 5 we were there. And that's the most I've drank in probably 5 years.
Wow.
Like, legitimately. I might drink one night and have a couple drinks, but not like really get loose and have a good time. But so that moment also spurred like the no drinking anymore, which is just, I can't even begin to quantify how great that's been for my life. But yeah, turning negative into good. It's like, I could have easily went the other way with my mom, right? I could have said, I don't have time to do an event, pushed off the first event. I could have said, I don't have time to train for a fight camp. I'm over here. So many things I could have said. Or I could have just dug my hole deeper and started drinking. And, I thought I was at rock bottom. If you, like, I say this all the time, like, yo, you are never truly at rock bottom. You can always fall deeper. You can always, there's 2 things you can use. You can use the shovel to dig the hole deeper and just keep going, or you can use the shovel to dig out some stairs. And I'm going to dig out some fucking stairs. So it doesn't even compute to me. Like when someone's going through some trauma or a tragedy, from where my brain goes is, how can I turn this tragedy into something beautiful? How can I? Same thing with Josh. When Josh passed, I could have easily just said, "Fuck Combat Night. We're gonna take a break for 6 months." No, 3 months later, we're running our first pro show. Like I want to make some greatness. I want to make this tragedy. I want to make it shine. I want to polish up that turd, and I want to make something beautiful. It's not easy. I know it's not. And Richard always tells me, because like me and Richard are, again, we're best friends. He's my matchmaker, and we have a lot of conversations, like deep conversations about life and stuff. And like he'll have some shitty stuff happen, and I'll give him my outlook, and he's like, "Bud, I don't understand how you do it. He's like, I don't say a lot of men are better than me, but when it comes to dealing with shit, bro, you're a fucking G." And I'm like, it's not difficult, man. Like in my head, it's just not difficult. I know it has to be because I hear it from other people, but like, man, if you got the option of falling deeper or climbing higher, I'm gonna climb higher. Like there's just, and everyone has that option, regardless if it's your dad passing, your mom passing, your kid being born at 23 weeks old. Like everyone has the ability to either dig deeper or start climbing. So I'm always going to choose to start climbing. And I say that cautiously, because I'm sure there is something that can hit me one day that's going to fucking bring me to my knees, and I'm going to dig a little deeper for that moment. But I'm always looking to use that shovel to dig out.
I think it's such an important perspective to have. I think that getting back to entrepreneurial qualities, that like almost unshakable optimism is another kind of entrepreneurial quality that you kind of have to be able to, because it's literally all ups and downs. It's like deep downs and really, really skyrocketing high ups, and you've got to be able to like stay level for all of them. You got to be able to stay humble at the top, and you got to be able to climb up those stairs at the bottom.
I always tell people too, it's like it's important to be stoic, right? It's important to not let the good things faze you or the bad things, and it's very hard to be able to not let either bother you or not let either faze you, because I'm gonna be real, like I don't know what you would call it, but like I call it like post-success slump. Like I have a really big event, I crush it, everything went right. There's no, like to the viewer's eyes, to my team's eyes, everything went right. And I'm on cloud 9 the night of the event. I literally wake up Sunday morning and I start picking apart what went wrong, what could have been better, what wasn't the best. And it's like my team will tell me, like, bro, just enjoy this shit for a little bit. And it's like, yo, this is me enjoying it. I enjoy reflecting on what I just did and figuring out how I can make it better. And but there is a little piece of me that's like it sucks a little bit, because I can't ride successes. I've never been this person that's gonna ride a success for months or for even weeks or for even days. I'm usually
does nothing for you.
It doesn't. There's no. It's like
it takes you backwards almost.
Yep.
It's like
it definitely doesn't push the ball forward.
Yeah, exactly.
And when we're doing events, every Saturday for a month, it's like I don't have time to go to the fucking pool, drink a Mai Tai, and think about how cool Saturday night was, because I got to do it again the next Saturday. So
yeah,
that's a big thing too. I think real successful business owners don't the optimism, but also they don't like find joy in the success for weeks. I'm just literally maybe a day or two, and then I'm on to the next thing. And my fiance thinks I'm crazy. My wife thinks I'm crazy. She's like, man, just enjoy it. Like, just enjoy life some. And I'm like, this is me enjoying life. Like, you just don't understand. Like, this is me enjoying life. I promise. But like, she's always concerned with me because of just how much of my mind's always working. My mind's always working. At night, sometimes she'll be going to bed at like 10:30. She's like, you need to go to bed. And I'm like, I hear you. I was like, I got some stuff to do though. I'm over here working, until 2 a.m.
My girlfriend gives me that all the time. She'll be like, you've been like up at like 3 a.m. the past couple nights just like working, you should probably like go to bed tonight. And I'm just like, yeah, I will. And then something happens and I'm like, yeah, I was up till 3 again. Just like working on stuff. But you can't really control, as a business owner, entrepreneur, like you can't really like fully turn it off ever. No. At least it's hard to, and you can't really control when like your best, most inspiring moments come either. Yep. I'll have like a moment where I was like planning to go to bed at 10 or 11, and then all of a sudden I'm like, oh, but this new idea, I've got to write this down. I've got to take notes. I've got to like script this thing out. I've got to like plan this out, and you have to ride those ideas and those waves to get the best work.
100%. I think if you call yourself an entrepreneur and you don't, have these things that we just talked about the optimism, the drive, and all these little things that add up together to something crazy, it's just, you're not going to be a good businessman. Like, I've never read anyone's book that was great at anything. I never read, when you read Mike Tyson's book, you don't read that book and go, oh, this guy really wasn't that motivated, or this guy really wasn't that talented. I look at that book and it makes me sick to my stomach that someone is more motivated and more passionate about anything than me.
Yeah.
I read Elon Musk's book and I'm like, this motherfucker. I'm like, this guy, how does he do all this?
Yeah.
Why does he, like, I do this with my team now where, like, I'll ask them, like, okay, when do we think, how long till we can get this figured out? And they're like, oh, we should be able to have it figured out by, 2 months from now. I'm like, cool, we're going to figure it out in 30 days. And
that's
like,
a total Elon Musk principle.
Yeah.
Have you heard his thing about the take your 10-year goal and figure out, like, it's like an exercise he likes to tell people to do. Take your 10-year goal and figure out how to get it done in 6 months.
Yep.
It's a crazy concept, but like, and most people fail to do it. Like, inherently, it's kind of set up for you to fail, but you learn so much.
You learn a lot, and hey, I mean, if your 10-year goal that you cut down to 6 months, and now you're halfway to your 10-year goal in 6 months, I call that a success. Like, sure, it's
you just
failure.
turned a 10-year goal into a 1-year goal.
Yeah, sure, it's failure on paper, but again, failures don't make or break me. I mean, if anything, they're going to make me more than they do break me. Because you're going to learn so much about yourself and you're going to grow so much in those moments. But yeah, like, I read these guys' books and I'm like, God, I feel like such a slacker. I feel like I'm behind on the ball. So that's where I find a lot of motivation too, is reading these other guys' books and talking to other business owners and other entrepreneurs, and just knowing that, like, okay, I'm not alone here. But also knowing, like, okay, there's people above me that are doing way more than me. So I'm not crazy. Like, if anything, I need to be crazier.
Exactly. And you find joy in that. When you have those qualities, you find joy in just digging in and getting crazier and crazier.
Yeah, and I love when I'm reading a book and, like, okay, Elon Musk does these 100 things, or Tyson did these 100 things, or, insert any crazy Gary V, whoever. And it's like, okay, cool. I'm doing 50 of these 100. All right, I'm doing 70.
I just have to do these other 50.
Yeah, it's like, all right, cool. Like,
halfway there.
Yep, I find joy in knowing that I'm doing something right. But then I also beat myself up because I'm like, oh yeah, this is goal 2. I need to be doing this as well.
I have a couple of closing questions for the podcast that I forgot to remind you of, but you can take as much time as you need to think about them. Just some questions I ask everyone towards the end. So my first question, and I'll use kind of your entry point into starting Combat Night as, like, the time that we go back to for this, but if you could go back in time and talk to a younger Mitch as he was first starting Combat Night, you're with your partner, it was Josh, right? You're with your partner, Josh. You guys are first starting Combat Night. What are a couple things, having the wisdom and knowledge that you have now, that you would tell him to do differently?
One thing I'd probably say is not to be scared what other people are going to think. I think I held myself back a lot in fear that, like, other promoters or people that were already doing events in towns would be offended that I was coming there. I think that I limited, we as a team limited Combat Night because we were too worried about offending other people or pissing off other people, which is not who I am today. Like, I piss off plenty of people in the MMA world. But, it's not out of spite. It's not trying to hurt them. So one thing that I would tell a younger me is don't be afraid. You're going to offend people. No one makes it to the top of the mountain without getting some haters along the way. Just not even call them haters, just people who don't like you. You might give them really good reason not to like you, which is fine. Not everyone's going to have the same, beliefs as you, the same passion as you, the same, mindset. And you can't let those people deter you from what you want to be. So that would be a big one for me.
I love that. The other question I have for you, because the show is called Profession Session, and the reason I call it that is because I love breaking down the tactics and qualities behind professional greatness. So my question to you is, what does it mean to you personally to be a professional in your life?
The biggest, being professional, the biggest thing for me is something I learned at a really early age. My dad taught me this, and it was just be a man of your word. It doesn't matter what it is, be a man of your word. You can't control what the person next to you says. You can't control what the person behind you says, but you can always control what comes out of your mouth. So if it comes out of your mouth, you have to deliver. And more often than not, that turns into great situations for me. At the time, I always feel like, why do I got to do this? But it's like, man of your word, man of your word. if anyone, when I die and they're giving my, I forget what that's called, the obituary.
Oh, the eulogy.
The eulogy.
Yeah.
I want them to say I'm a man of my word. I want them to say that if I told you I would be there for you at noon to help you train, I would be there. You know, so being a man of your word, I think, is one of the most important factors to have, or attributes to have, traits to have as a professional. If you say it, do it. If you say it, mean it. Don't say it if you don't mean it. You know, a good example. I'll give you a good example of when this has happened for me. I had I used to do cage rentals as well. Like when we were first starting, we weren't making really good money on the events. We're making enough to survive, but I would rent out my cage. I rented out the cage, and the truck broke down like 30 minutes from the venue, and we were setting it the day of an event. And there was no way to get this truck fixed in time. My box truck broke down. I was like, I'm calling him. I'm like, hey man, I just want to give you a heads up. I'm going to be late. You know, he's like, what happened? I was like, my box truck broke down. And he's like, oh shit. He's like, you can figure that out. And I was like, I'll figure it out. And I get off the phone with him, and I literally get out of my truck, and I'm like, just pacing around the truck. And like, I look over and I see a U-Haul. I'm like, fuck yeah. So I run over to U-Haul. I rent a U-Haul. I back it up to my box truck. I pull up the gate by myself, unload an entire cage into the box truck. Boom. Took me like 2 hours to just like, you know, because the way the cage is put in a certain order. Mm-hmm. So the stuff that's in the front can't be put in first.
Oh my God.
So yeah, I'm literally like putting stuff to the side, grabbing.
So that you can rearrange it completely.
Exactly. But, you know, man of my word, I told the guy I would be there. I gave him a commitment, and stands true to this day. If I tell a fighter something, or if I tell someone on my team something, if I tell my wife something, just being a man of your word will go a long ways, not just in business, but in life in general. I think that too many people, they don't treat their word. They don't have value behind their words, or they don't put value on words. And I know people always say all the time, like, oh, it's just words, or it's just whatever, or like, who cares? It's like, nah, man, what you say in today's day and age with social media too, what you type and what you put into this universe, it needs to be something that you can perform. It needs to be something you can do. And if you're doing that, don't get me wrong, I've said things I wasn't sure I could deliver on, but that's like to push me to make sure I deliver on it. But if you're saying stuff and you're putting it out there, you need to follow through with it as a businessman. The most important, being a man of your word.
I agree. And just as a man.
Yeah, I mean, fuck. The last thing I ever want anyone to say about me is like, oh, you can't really trust that, or like, I don't know if that's gonna happen. Yeah. You know, and I hear that, especially in our sport, bro. It is rampant, like people not being a man of their word, or just saying something to say it because it's what you want to hear at the time, or it's what they want to say at the time. And it's like, yeah, and not just our sport. I'm sure in every business, I see it across the board where, you know, people will make these statements, and then you see in their action, it's like, oh, you're full of shit. I don't want to be that guy ever.
I love that. Mitch, is there anything else that you would want to share with the audience?
Nah, man. I mean, if they're fans of fighting, check out Combat Night MMA on Instagram. We got a lot of really good upcoming athletes. We got guys, like I said, in the next probably year, we'll probably have close to 24 guys in the UFC. I think right now we have probably 24 between PFL, UFC, Bellator. You know, just it's different. Like if you might follow other social media accounts that involve fighting, but we're really trying to help our athletes get to the next level, and not just get there, but stay there and thrive. And because of that, we've built a community, like I said earlier, to really, you know, make them feel welcome, make them feel like they have someone home. I will say one more thing. I didn't get a chance to say this during the podcast. I think it's super important for businessmen, not just fighters as well, because if you're a fighter, you should consider yourself a business. You know, you're going to be a 1099 employee even when you get to the UFC. So you're an entrepreneur, whether you want to be or not. I found a lot of value in, I don't know how I figured this out or when it came to me, or I probably heard it on a podcast, but I think in business and fighting, you need to have 3 people in your life. You need to have the mentors, the people you look up to, and the people that are going to, that are better than you, right? If you're talking about fighting, you need to be in the gym with somebody that can whoop your ass. And every time you get in front of them, they're going to whoop your ass. Same thing in business. My mentors whoop my ass in business. Like they're telling me stuff. I'm like, oh, duh. Why didn't I think of that? And then you need to have someone who's on the same level as you in business. Someone that can share the hardships with you and can relate like real time, because business is changing every day. So the mentors that you have maybe can't relate to the problems you're dealing with right now because they never had to deal with Instagram or social media or trying to figure out how to market on those things. So having the mentor, having someone on the same level as you, and in the gym, it's probably your favorite sparring partner, the person on the same level as you, the person that you go tit for tat, back and forth. And then you need to have somebody that you're mentoring, somebody that you're helping bring up, and somebody that you're helping give insight, just like you're getting from your mentor. And the same thing in the gym. You need to have someone that you beat the shit out of. If you're a fighter, you need to have someone that you whoop to build that confidence and to keep the confidence there from the guys that are whooping you. So those three people, someone you look up to, someone you're on the same level as, and someone that's below you that you're helping get to your level.
I love that.
Yeah, I think a lot of guys miss that. A lot of guys don't understand. Like, we talked about mentorship multiple times in this podcast. As important as it is for us to be mentored and for us to seek mentors, it's also very important to recognize when someone else is seeking a mentor and to step in and be that person for them, because I think we learn so much more whenever we are in a teaching or coaching aspect of life. So I think those three people are key.
I love that. How can people find you? You talked about how to find Combat Night, and I know you don't love to be the center of attention and promoting yourself, but how can people find you?
Recently, I enjoy it. Not that I enjoy being the center of attention, but I enjoy making people laugh. So
you've been making great content.
I appreciate it, man. My personal page is like Mac, M-A-C, and then Chamale, H-A-M-A-L-E. So it's M-A, then my last name, C-H-A-M-A-L-E. And it's constant ridiculousness. I'm not trying to be serious whatsoever. I'm trying to hurt some snowflakes' feelings. I'm trying to, like, purposely. I'm like a troll, but not in the worst aspect. I'm like mid-level troll. I'm not like a horrible troll.
I love it. I'm going to check it out some more when
for sure,
we get off it. Thank you so much for this conversation. This has been enlightening. It's been really cool hearing about what you built and just the mindset that you take and everything. Thank you again.
Yeah, I really appreciate you having me, man. I really enjoyed my time here, and I look forward to doing it again sometime.
Likewise. Thanks again. All right, and that's a podcast.